Hello, everyone. It's great to see a really big crowd again. That's wonderful on such a dark and gloomy and wet night. So thank you for being here where it's warm and cozy. This is the December 9th meeting of the Bennington Select Board. My name is Jeannie Jenkins, and I have the pleasure of chairing this board. And I will ask my fellow board members to introduce themselves.
Hi, I'm Nancy White.
I'm Ed Woods.
Good evening, I'm Tom Haley.
Clark Adams.
Jean Connor.
Excellent. And also with us tonight, we have our town manager, Stu Hurd. We have Nancy Lively, who takes excellent minutes. We have Josh Boucher, who is on the CAT TV camera. And we have Jonah Spivak, who is on the computer to make sure our audio visuals go well. Thank you. All right, so first order of business is we have a little bit of rearrangement on the agenda due to some last-minute changes. I'm going to ask for a motion to remove item 6, which is the Woodford Packers Roaring Branch Floodplain Restoration Project. We will, because of a snow day, the person that was presenting cannot be here tonight, but Dara Zink will be here on January 13th, which is our next sort of regular meeting to present that. So that's one change, and then the other change is I'd like to ask that we switch number 7, which is step 2 PFAS design South End, and charter warning language, so that step 2 PFAS is number 5, and the charter warning language is number 7.
It's actually number 6 once you remove
True.
current number 6.
Okay.
So moved.
Nancy, you got that? Okay. All right. It's been seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, it's unanimous. All right. So now let's move on to the pledge. Ed, if you would lead us.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. Tom, would you share the vision statement that guides our work, please?
I will. Bennington is a welcoming, engaged, inclusive, resilient community where everyone, regardless of identity, shares in our vitality and benefits from an outstanding quality of life.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
All right, next up on the agenda is the consent agenda. For the purposes of discussion, could I have a motion to accept the minutes of November 25th, the warrants and licenses?
So moved.
Second?
Great, all right. Any, let's see, let's start with the minutes of November 25th. Any comments or concerns about those minutes? All right, I have, oh, okay, go ahead.
Starting at, I guess, line 450 through line 476.
Can you give us a page?
That would be page 13.
Okay.
I'm a bit confused. On numerous occasions, members of the board and community have raised questions about completeness of statements posted in the minutes, and they were repeatedly told that the minutes are not a transcript, and that if people wanted to hear the whole commentary, that they were to follow it on the CAT TV broadcast, since that would present the full comments as stated. Now, what I'm concerned about is I see a exact verbatim statement that pretty much parallels what was even published in the newspaper less than 8 hours later. So my question is it permissible to bring in a pre-written and composed statement to be included in these minutes? Or in fact, are these minutes supposed to represent a kind of general overview of commentary?
That's a good question. We have certainly had times when when people have handed something in and those have gone in the minutes. I don't know. I don't know.
I think usually under Robert's rules, if something is submitted to the board to be included in the minutes, then it would be included
Okay.
verbatim.
Okay.
And when would some notification of that to the board be made?
It would just be at the time, if you have a statement that you then hand to Nancy, then it goes in the minutes.
So-
Nancy, is that your understanding?
No.
Is that?
I really don't have an understanding. I just thought that was a pretty specific statement, and I didn't want to misquote.
Okay. Jean?
I just want to say I did not provide Nancy with a copy of what I said.
Oh, okay.
I did not.
Okay. All right. But I think in the past, when people have had a specific statement and asked for it to be included, it has been. That's accurate, right?
So
Okay.
I just want to make clear, at what point, if I had something I wanted admitted into the minutes, when and where would I provide that notification to the board or to Nancy or even to the
It would-
public at large?
So it would be, if it came up in this, so for instance, if there's a discussion and you say, I have a statement, I'm going to read it, and I'd like to give it to Nancy for inclusion in the minutes, then that would happen. We don't include something that hasn't been shared with the public because these minutes are reflection of the meeting. So, so you could, and certainly people have done this, they've come with a prepared statement and said, I want this included in the minutes, or I'm thinking on occasion people have brought materials and said, I'd like to leave these with the board for them to read, in which case, usually what happens is I take it, just because they often hand it to me. Whoever they hand it to takes it, they read it, and then they put it on the table, on our office table where our packets are, and anyone that wants to read it can. And I think there has been a blue folder there for about 2 months that I actually picked up today that follows those lines. So there are many avenues for sharing information. But certainly, if you make a statement and you feel like it's necessary to have it, you want it to be verbatim, then submit what you say.
Well, I found that a little confusing because I think 2, maybe 3 meetings ago, I specifically requested the minutes be adjusted or amended to reflect what I perceived as a personal condemnation or attack against my position on a subject, and that was not included even after a subsequent request, and I understand a comment to the effect that it would be amended, but it never took place, but then also referred to, well, look back on CAT TV if you really want to know the
Yeah,
details.
and I think that is because it was not something that was read, it was a spontaneous back and forth, and I think that is a spontaneous back and forth tends to be, you capture the gist of it. Even though Jean did not give a copy to Nancy, she clearly was reading a text that was very straightforward to follow, and it was not a back and forth. But I do think it's something for us to think about. In the future, it rarely comes up, but has come up now. So, so we should think about how we want to handle that in the future.
Again, I want to restate my request
Okay.
that the previously requested, at least twice, amended minutes reflecting the, what I consider inappropriate personal attacks be part of the minutes, because I noticed the minutes mentioned my response, but nothing to the effect that my response was in reply to a personal attack.
All right, so we'll take that under advisement. I think we went to, I think we did check with town council, who advised us that, that because it was a back and forth and was not a statement, it did not qualify, it did not make sense to include it as a verbatim.
Well, we've heard
request.
to assure that something is included in the minutes, turning in a statement to the secretary or the chair or vice chair is the way to do it.
Yes. Yeah, it is.
So I think we've got it covered. If something you want in the minutes, specifically, handing something in writing in would be appropriate.
All right. So I have, did you have something on the warrants?
I did. Well, just to add to that, I think it was the last meeting where I requested the statement the citizen read at the meeting before be in the minutes, in its entirety, and you said, well, that's not how we do it, and anybody can watch CAT TV, so I think we really need this clarified. I think the citizen read a very important statement, and I was told it couldn't be in the minute, so.
So again, the resident made a statement, and the essence of it was included in the transcript. I think that what you just heard is, if there's something that you specifically want in the transcript, then request it, and then it's done. I have a question on page 12, line 420, sorry. So it says, Ms. Jenkins added that the public records requests made by Mr. Adams have been added to the board email. I think what it should say was Ms. Jenkins added that the public records requests made by Mr. Adams can be added to the public records request list. However, there wasn't a response, so I didn't do that. Clark, if you do want those 3 public records requests, which were not those 3 requests for information, coded as public records requests and included in the list, I can give that information to Nancy. But I didn't do it because I didn't get a response.
Well, as I said at the time, I specifically wrote in them that I wanted my request to be addressed as a member of the community's request to be. I wanted to be no ambiguity or confusion about the request I made, and I felt by not having them in the public record, that might lead to some question. Anytime I communicate with something like that, I want the public to see it.
Okay.
And I reiterated that recently in a
Well, actually, there was no response when I asked that question, so I didn't put it in, but it's going to Nancy now, so she'll have it. All right. So I think if you would leave it as can be added to the public records request, and I guess indicate that Clark would like that to happen. Any other warrants? I'm sorry, minutes.
Page 11?
Excuse me, on that statement, it was added to the board email.
The public, yeah, so it should say public records request list.
There was no discussion.
There was no board email.
It wasn't about board email, Nancy. It was about a public records request list.
All right.
Okay.
Page 11, 380 and 381. I don't know if some words dropped out of the sentence. It says, Mr. Woods, on March 28, 2022, the spending of $2.96 million was on the Ben High and the skateboard park. Well, that was the first meeting for the Ben High. Nobody voted at that meeting.
Well, this is what Ned said. It's not whether it's accurate or not, it's what Ned said.
Okay, well, I just wanted to point that out.
Okay, you
I didn't know
can't
if something
change,
was
I mean,
I didn't know if something was missing out of there.
I don't think so, and it was pointed out that a lot of numbers got thrown around in it, and in terms of how much money we were really talking about.
I just didn't want somebody to look back and think something was voted on that date.
Well,
The board actually voted on that day. That's what my comment was in reference to. So for point of clarity, Mr. Wood stated that on March 28, 2022, the board voted the spending.
oh, so add.
That's what I said.
Okay.
What line are
But
we
that's
on?
not what they did.
381, that is what they did.
They voted
385.
to approve the contract. There was no $2.6 million mentioned at the meeting.
Not debating that with you, Nancy.
All right, all we're trying to do is have correct minutes. So Mr. Woods hopes that the board will honor the decision made on March 28, 2022 on
That's correct.
how to spend the ARPA funding.
That's correct.
Okay, all right, so, okay. All right, anything else on the minutes before we move on to the warrants? Okay. here we are. All right, anything on the warrants? We're all satisfied with how the money has been spent this month?
Apparently so.
Okay, all right, liquor licenses? Any concerns about those? All right, did we make a, we did
have a
make a motion.
motion.
All right, ready to vote? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, please say no. Any abstentions? Okay, it's unanimous. Wonderful. All right, next up, we have public comment. All right. Jason Frederickson, you are up first with tone, and thank you for your legible handwriting.
It's more important than you think.
It's very important, which is why I type everything at work. All right. Jason Frederickson, Bennington, Vermont. I'm starting with wow. I haven't talked about me in public since college and being a speaker for the Massachusetts Safe Schools program, but I can do this. Good evening, Select Board leaders, town employees, and our amazing community. Thank you for the privilege to speak. Growing up, I spent a lot of time away from home with teachers, business owners, and community leaders, looked up and had a deep respect for their roles as they helped shape my character. The people of this town helped raise me. I'm a survivor of child abuse, assault, and bullying. I live with depression, PTSD, and ADHD. Every day, every moment, I choose positive interactions and environments as a healthy way of living. I'm a new homeowner, work 2 jobs, make $20 an hour, and barely make it paycheck to paycheck. Anxiety. Life is hard. I stand here a proud Benningtonian. Over the last months, actually, I don't know how long it's been, but I keep finding myself asking, why am I being triggered at these meetings? There's a lack of fundamental respect for each other and our institutional procedures. There are frank and targeted exchanges of views. Government is happening. I'm here for the light bulb moments, though, where I can discover all the wonderful things Bennington is doing now for our and my future. I do not like to live in fear and certainly not here for doom and gloom, rude comments, and bully behavior. I'm often unsettled during some of the dialogue happening here, have been uncomfortable and wanted to say something. You are talking live in front of the community. Be mindful of the sound, phrasing, tone, manner, maybe even take a pause, like I do, if my brain gets going too fast, if feeling overly passionate about a topic. There is no room for drama and sensationalism. Use discretion, listen instead of reacting, be approachable, and be kind. It's not just what you say, it's how you say it. Tone is substantive. Please communicate and treat one another with respect. Each of you have earned support in our community to elect by choosing to elect each of you to lead our town. You have the support. Focus on positivity and growth while acknowledging the stark realities we live in today. Every meeting is a working interview for your constituents and for future candidates. We are creating history. What do we want the future to say, looking back at how we handled complex things? These government meetings should be polite, ordered, calming. You're the leaders to walk us through a disaster. I trust you bring the ability. Can you work together? I look to our leaders and town employees to always be approachable and open-minded to all opinions, so all members to the public feel like they can speak up, regardless. I turned 48 today, and my family is waiting for me at home to celebrate. As much as I want to be here, I have to catch this on the recording, sadly. With gratitude and respect, and thank you for your time.
Thank you, Jason. That was an excellent way to begin, and it also reminds me again that I need to say public comment is a time that we allow the public an opportunity to share information or make announcements that benefit the community at large. Topics should not be related to an agenda item. if a member of the public wants to comment on an agenda item, they can do that during the discussion of that item. Comment should be 3 minutes or less, and Jean has a handy-dandy 30-second warning. All right. Speakers are required to state their legal name and town of residence. Sharing of comments, announcements, and concerns are encouraged rather than asking questions. Public comment is not a time for discussion. If you have a specific question, you best should call the town manager. If there is something quick that we can answer, we will do that after everyone has finished public comment. And, you know, please be civil. So let's see. Next up, less excellent handwriting, Jack. Jack Rossiter-Munley, Bennington Multicultural Community Center, maybe. I don't know. Okay.
Sorry. At least I got part of it. Jack Rossiter-Munley, Bennington, Vermont. Here to just mention 2 events that are coming up at the Bennington County Multicultural Community Center. Next week on Thursday the 19th from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. we will have an open house celebrating the first year of us being open and operating in our permanent space. There have been a lot of changes since that time. More people have joined us on our staff and also in the local refugee community. We've started more programs. The exterior of our space has been transformed by murals, and we want to share all of that joy with the community, along with food from different cultures represented by the refugee community and activities that are drawn from those cultures. So that will be from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. at 120 Union Street here in Bennington. Many of you may know it as the former Berkshire Dance Studio. The other event is the following day. It is on the 20th, and that is going to be in the evening at 6 p.m. It will also be taking place at 120 Union Street here in Bennington. Many of you may know it as the former Berkshire Dance Studio. And that will be a combined acknowledgement of both the winter solstice, which is a phenomenon and a name that many of us are familiar with, and indeed we have many local faith communities and cultural groups who have practices around the solstice as the longest night of the year. And it will also be an acknowledgement of Shab Yalda, which is also an acknowledgement of the longest night of the year that is common in Afghanistan. So it will be a combined sort of blending of cultures in that event. You are all welcome to come and participate. The practices around Shab Yalda are very similar to a lot of the solstice practices that we have about acknowledging the absence and return of light and the sharing of food and fellowship during the longest night of the year. So we hope that you will join us on the 19th for the open house and on the 20th for Shab Yalda. There'll be many more notices about both these events going out, but I also wanted to make everyone aware this evening.
Thank you, Jack. Vicki Lamprin, reprehensible behavior.
Vicki Lamprin, Bennington. Robert's Rules of Order prevent meetings from going off topic and to maintain decorum. I haven't seen much decorum or order as of the past few months. I will speak specifically to my observations and the dismay I have been feeling. I wish to address specific actions of board members. One board member has not only gone off topic many times, but acts as an obstructionist and also wastes people's time by asking the same question over and over again, expecting a different answer. Last meeting, this board member went on ad nauseum asking questions about the use of the ARPA funds, even though they had been explained that what was being done to save the citizens of Bennington, $2.59 million, was not only legal, but it appeared that you wished for Bennington to lose millions of dollars. You seem to not be able to process the information you've been given. Another board member seems to have an inability to control their emotions and act in a way that is expected of a board member. This is shameful. Hitting the table with your hands, standing up and yelling at your colleagues and town manager is unbecoming. I've gone toe-to-toe with Congress critters who are much meaner and more powerful than you try to be, and they don't intimidate me one bit. This behavior is a microcosm of the behaviors I have seen firsthand in Washington, D.C. I won't stand silently by while you attempt to destroy Bennington. I requested public emails from Mr. Clark to Mr. Culkin with Ms. White CC'd, and what I read was distressing, sneaky, and threatening. From 8:18 to 9:15, there were more than 48 emails between them. The fact that you were discussing confidential town information with Mr. Culkin is a direct violation of your responsibilities and the trust that the voters of Bennington had hoped to see in you. One of the email's subject line from Mr. Adams said, "Dickheads on the select board." Mr. Culkin encouraged you to stand on the necks of your colleagues and continue to act as a bully. I also wonder if you are able to make board decisions without consulting with Mr. Culkin, who last I knew was not an elected board member. Mr. Culkin is using you and Ms. White as pawns and puppets who he alone is controlling. You and Ms. White are allowing yourselves to be manipulated by one person while not considering the dire consequences of your actions. I am hopeful that you will consider my words and give some thought on how you could do better. Thank you. Oh, I also have all of the emails if anybody would like to see them.
Thank you, Vicki. Bridget Elder, Library.
I just wanted to say that the Bennington Library is really fantastic. We're very lucky to have it. The librarians make you feel welcome, and it really has a sense of community. And they have free COVID tests. You can get puzzles sometimes there, and you can do puzzles there if you want. I think you can check out puzzles. I'm not sure about that, which is nice to do on a cold winter day. And of course, the best thing about it are the books. So use your library, because it's great.
Thank you, Bridget. Let's see. Announcement, Jack Rossiter Munley and Martha Mackey.
Martha Mackey, Bennington, Vermont.
And I'm still Jack Rossiter Munley, also from Bennington, Vermont.
And we're here to announce that we're running for Select Board on March 4th, for the March 4th election. We're running together because of our shared vision for Bennington as a thriving, connected community. We care deeply about this town and are excited to run an optimistic campaign that brings people together around finding creative and practical solutions to the challenges that face Bennington.
And since the public comment time is not a time for discussion, if you want to learn more about us and our campaign, you can reach out to us at our brand new Select Board email address, which is very easy to remember, jackandmartha4sb@gmail.com. That is jackandmartha4sb@gmail.com. Cat TV, everyone in the room, look at our handiwork. We are very excited to spend the next few months continuing to build relationships in this community and listening to the hopes, dreams, and concerns of all of our fellow residents and sharing our vision with all of you. And we're so excited to get to work not only campaigning, but we hope, if we're lucky enough to be on the board, working very hard for all of the people of Bennington. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you both. Is there anyone who did not sign up who would like to speak? Maria, then Al. No, Maria, go ahead.
So,
introduce yourself first.
Hi, I'm Maria Corrales, a resident Bennington, Vermont. My understanding, Chair, regarding the statement you said earlier, I just want some clarification. So when I made comments, my statements weren't written in the minutes, and when Mona Gauthier, hers were edited. So are you saying that this is a new instruction? Because it's after the fact, you know, other people's comments were edited or not allowed in the minutes, but this time you had verbatim. So is this something new? Because you said you spoke with counsel? This is something new? This is after the fact? Because it did occur already, so I'm just asking you. Is that what you're saying?
So regarding the process, if you want to make a comment, you can.
So every time I should go to her afterward and say, make sure every word is in there?
No, Maria, what I'm saying is go ahead and make your comment, and then you'll sit down, and then Al is next up, and he will get up and make his comment, and then if there is anything out of the comments that we want to make a comment on, we will do that, because as we've noted, this is public comment, which is a time to make comment for the good of all. And I'm not sure there's much to be added beyond the conversation that you already heard, but we'll think on it. But please.
No, I just wanted to know is
it's not a time for discussion.
What gets put in and who doesn't? Do I just walk over to her and make sure
Maria,
everything that I said should go in?
Your comment is noted, and we'll respond after everyone is done.
No, I want to understand your instruction.
Maria, once everyone that is speaking during public comment has commented, then it's a time that we can respond to it, rather than having a back and forth with each person as they come up, because this is a comment time rather than a discussion time. Okay. So your question is noted, okay?
Okay, and you'll clarify that in the
I will try.
Thank you.
Thank you. Hi, Al. Yep.
Hi, I'm Al Bashefkin, a resident of Bennington, Vermont. About a decade ago, PFOA was discovered in the Bennington community, and there was a lot of work in terms of restoring and bringing town water to some of the polluted water sources that we had, and that was great. A lot of that was in negotiations with the firm that polluted, and that period ended. I live on Spring Hill Road. No, I live on Sellers. I live on Sellers Road. And our neighborhood is Sellers Road, Spring Hill Road. 2 houses were included in that original settlement. However, there were houses that had pollution, as documented by the people that were checking our water supply. So I'm here actually to thank all who engaged with the state, who engaged with our community, who engaged with our neighbors, and helped to bring us safe and healthy water supply. So Weaver Construction was the firm that did the construction and put in the new water lines. MSK was the engineer. I want to thank the Select Board for all that you did in terms of advocating for state resources to help bring that new water to our neighborhood. I just want to thank you. I don't know if we've done that, but I know that sometimes you stuck your necks out a little bit in terms of our neighborhood and other neighborhoods, and it's appreciated. Most of the houses in our neighborhood accepted that new water, and it's a real deal. I thank you for that.
Thank you, Al. I don't think anyone's thanked us for that. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. Well, yeah, I mean, you probably did. You probably did, personally. Not here, though. But not here, yeah. All right. So,
Jeannie, you got one more.
Oh, please. John, come on up. If you're in the back, you have to really wave. Yeah.
My name is John Goodrich. I'm a resident of Bennington, previous owner of the mill and Mace. I wanted to make 2 comments. One is Annie is playing at the Monument Arts Center, and it's wonderful, so go see it. And many of you may have seen it. If you haven't, it's worth every bit of it. The other comment is the methadone clinic going in where I think it is? And if it is, I want to voice my opinion that it's a mistake. and it may not mean anything, but I wanted to say that. I think that it should not be downtown. It should not be across from the Putnam Hotel.
But I think we do have, what's the latest information you have? But I think we do have, what's the latest information you have on the hub?
I understand that the individuals or the company that is going to be operating the methadone clinic has leased space in the former Aubuchon Hardware building, and they have hired contractors to do the upfit. It has taken a long, long time for this process to come to fruition, but we understand that it's now formally underway.
Okay. And are they actually doing construction at this point?
I'm not sure. I'd have to look to our permitting office to see whether any permits have been granted, and here comes Mr. Monks.
I believe permits have been granted, but I do work out at Anytime Fitness, and I haven't seen any activity in there, so I don't think they've actually begun work yet.
All right, thank you. It has been something that that Project Alliance has been working with the state to try and get more information, and it's just, it's been difficult to get. And then I think the only thing, Maria, to say further on the clarification is this is not a new, I mean, forever and ever, the minutes reflect what happens at the meeting. In general, it is, something is handed if something should go verbatim. I think the nature of the comment and then both the unusualness of the circumstances and the heartfelt need to say it weighed heavily enough that it became something that was put in the minutes. In general, over the years, you know, it's occasionally there's something verbatim in the minutes, but generally not. The general rule is it should reflect the flavor of the meeting and make sure the most important piece is that if any decisions are made, it's very clear what decision was made and how people voted. And that's the most important piece. So because, again, these meetings are to do the town's work, and that work is done in the public. So that is the, you know, that is the guiding piece for this. I think the question that's been raised is a good one for us to keep mulling over how to do everything we do better. I think, you know, the comments that have been made tonight and have been made at previous meetings also help us think about, we are here to do the work of the town and to make sure that everything we do makes this town the best place it can be. And when we stray from that, you know, I think it is important for the public to call us to task, and also it's important for us to call ourselves to task. So, you know, I think that's enough. That's all I can say on that.
And
all right.
We left it,
okay.
the clarifying point that for something to be committed to the minutes verbatim, handing something in to the secretary that has been shared in public is the way to do that. And I repeat that because we said it earlier as it relates to board member statements. The same could hold true for public statements.
Okay. All right, so next up is what used to be 7 and now is 5. Step 2, PFAS Design South End with Jason Dolmich.
Good evening. My name is Jason Dolmich. I'm with MSK Engineers, and I'm here to give you some information about a Step 2 Water Infrastructure Division loan funding application that's before you, and to answer any questions that you have about it so that we can move this process forward. I'll thank Andy for really teeing me up here. He's experiencing the end of the process for what was Settlers and Spring Hill Road, which was a portion of the town that was not covered by St. Gobain funds for construction. That project was applied for through the same mechanism that we're discussing the new areas of discovered contamination, and that loan process is the same. We applied for a Step 2 fund and then a Step 3, which is Step 2 is the design and Step 3 is the construction, and that area was also covered under the same section of the funding program that this will be, which is what is called the Emerging Contaminants Fund, and that is a portion of drinking water state revolving loan funds that are 100% reimbursable. We say that it would be easier for everybody to understand it as a grant, but because it's a loan program, we have to describe it as 100% reimbursable, meaning that the funds are paid entirely from the loans funds and are not required to be paid back by the community. So just like Settlers and Spring Hill Road, all of the costs associated with the extension of that water line were covered by state funds, and this process is going to follow the same. So with that, this, as I mentioned, is the Step 2. So this is the design phase of water system expansion for two distinct areas of town. One, just in the eastern side of town, there's a small dead-end road named Hickory Hill. So there would be a small diameter water main that would be extended to cover contaminated wells in that street. And then similarly, the area covering south of the end of Stonehenge and bounded by Monument Avenue Extension and Route 7 South that is not currently covered by public water. And so that's the green area there. Covers about, the whole area covers about 63 homes that have varying degrees of contamination, discovered contamination of PFOA. The other thing that I'll note is that we acknowledge that this does not cover the entire area of newfound contamination, but does cover the area of known contamination at the time that we applied for the Step 1 funding and report that we completed recently over the summer. So those areas will follow a similar process, but because those wells were more recently discovered, we're going to be doing feasibility. The first step is going to be doing feasibility and applying for a Step 1 loan fund for the same funding mechanism through the Emerging Contaminants Fund. And that's the general overview, so I'll just, before I just ramble on about steps and other things, I'll leave it open for questions.
This is wonderful that the money continues to be available to get people hooked up to safe water supplies. That's wonderful. Is it ever going to end, or is the
contamination?
Yeah, no, well,
in Bennington?
No, well, I guess so. I guess ultimately that is the question.
Well, what I will say is we're running out of space where we don't have water systems. It does at least where populations exist. This is a new block of contamination, so we're still sort of watching the state do their well testing. There does appear to be widespread contamination in the southeast corner of town, how that gets addressed, will remain to be evaluated. Yeah.
Another follow-up question is, are the scientists able to determine if the source of the contamination is the same, or is it a new source?
So there will be a public meeting. It was supposed to happen last week.
Right.
I'm going to leave those types of answers to the state because we're on the solution side, so all I can describe is hearsay. So I think it's better left for them. I believe they're stepping towards identifying a polluter. But the bipartisan infrastructure bill, which created the Emerging Contaminants Fund, affords us in this condition is while the state is going through their process, we're sort of skipping ahead, and instead of waiting for PRP to start paying for design and construction services, that we're using some allocated grant, essentially grant funding, to get this process moving a little bit more quickly.
And the folks who've been identified so far that have contaminated wells, do they have POET systems in place right now?
That's another really great question that I will leave to the state to answer. Yeah,
Okay.
I apologize that I don't have any information on that.
Okay.
Other questions from the board? Yes, Tom.
You just mentioned that the public meeting, a lot of people probably know, was rescheduled. Has the new date been announced?
I believe it's going to be sometime in January, but I don't know that it's been announced yet.
It hasn't been announced yet, but my conversations with Richard Spees of the agency indicate it might be as late as February 3rd, which is a Monday, I believe, first Monday in February.
All right. Other questions from the board? No? Questions from the audience? Yes, John, please come up. John, you have to come up to the, Cat TV has to capture you. State your name again.
On the map where you're talking about? Yeah, it's, we slapped this plan together. It's the green area, which includes basically South Shire, Meadowbrook Drive, Monument Avenue Extension, and then Route 7 south of Merson Street. And me. And you, okay. That's what I wondered. If you're in that green bubble, then you're in it. Thank you, sorry.
Thank you. No, that's good. Other questions? All right, so what do you need tonight? You need a motion for us to approve the application?
There's
the submission of the application?
I believe it's a motion, or at a minimum signatures, I believe from the majority of the board.
Okay. You have the motion?
I don't have the motion.
Okay, so would a motion to...
Motion would be to approve the application.
The application,
Step 2 design.
okay, for the state revolving loan fund program? Okay. Would someone like to make that motion? Okay.
I'll make the motion.
All right.
Second.
All right. Any further discussion? No? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, so we should all sign this.
I will circulate one. I've printed your names, so if you'd sign by your name.
Perfect. And thank you, Jason.
Jason, thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right. Okay, so then next up is the charter warning language, which is really the bulk of tonight, even though we're further in time than I would have expected. The plan is to finalize the language tonight and make a motion to approve the warning with the ballot items. What we are looking at is the warning language, and then, the warning itself, and then the 6 different items that have been recommended to go on to the ballot based on the conversation that we had at the last minute, which was minimal, but it was pretty clear that alternate language for the 6th recommendation would be helpful. And so what we have done is 2 things. One, it turned out the Charter Review Group also amended their language, but we asked Merrill to also amend language to put in language that more closely followed the intent of the task force that created CPARB. I've also when we get to that, I've also given all of Select Board members a copy of a memo that Town Council gave us on March 11th, 2022, talking about how CPARB could have the power to review any complaint investigation that the police department had completed. And when we get to that, there are some, I'll read some of it aloud just so the public has a sense as well. Okay, so with that, I would suggest we start with the page that says warning. And I think the only thing I'm wondering about here is we talked about, this is on the same evening, the meetings, the public hearings are on the same evenings as our regular Select Board member meeting. And we talked about maybe starting at 5 rather than 6 so that we wouldn't be here super late since we have a meeting after the hearing. Is that possible? Yes.
I need 5:15.
Okay, well, even if we did 5:30.
Okay, I'll get here as soon as I possibly can.
Okay,
but-
well, I'm just wondering, could we start at 5:30 on those 2 days so that our meetings don't go till 10?
I'm in favor of starting at 5:30.
Is that a concern for anyone? Okay, all right. The dates on here are January 27th and February 10th, which are both Mondays. It gives us time to be able to get these measures on the ballot. Any concerns there? No? Okay.
Well, the ballots have to be sent out at the end of January?
Ballots are available February 12th. I noted that at the base of the warning. So we would have to finish up our work on the 10th. We would not be able to amend any of the questions because the town clerk would prepare a ballot with those questions on it.
Is your
It is.
Okay. Okay.
Am I not being direct enough?
I don't.
I've got my soft voice on.
Thank you.
Use your teacher voice. Okay.
So no changes are going to be made at either after.
You can make changes after the first hearing if you decide to do so, and those have to be made within 10 days of the hearing so that they can be effectively discussed at the next meeting. And we tried to give enough time in between.
But when I talked to Cassie last week, she asked everything to send the ballots out the last week in January to get them back for the voters.
That may be true, but given the time frame that we have here, we must hold 2 public hearings.
No, but I just want to understand, we aren't going to have time to make any changes after the first one.
No, that's true. You won't have time after the first one to make any changes.
I thought we did after the first and not the second.
After the first one, yes, but once those changes are made, they would go to the clerk's office so she can begin to prepare, assuming that because you are warning this for a vote. So changes that you make after the first meeting will be incorporated into the warning, and that warning will then go to the town clerk. So she can begin to prepare her ballots. If on February 10th you decide to strike the whole thing, that would be your purview.
Then we're up a creek.
Would throw things into...
Then we're likely off the ballot.
Yeah. So the public hearings serve several purposes. The most important purpose is an opportunity for all of us to understand what's being proposed on the ballot and the implications. The other is that, if we wanted to change anything, we could. It would have to go back to council for legalese, right? And
yes,
making sure it was fair game to do. So that's what we understood, was after the first hearing, we could change something. After the second hearing, we can't. So the second hearing is really to flesh out any questions people have about the implications of the measures.
That's correct.
Okay. Does that work for you?
Well, she has to have everything set to go to the printers in the end of January. So
So by the end of the meeting on the 27th, we know by law we have 10 days. Based on what Stu just said, we probably have less time if she wants to finalize the ballot by the end of January.
Because she has to have it back by February 12th for absentee ballots.
February 12th.
So we will make sure that town council knows that the turnaround time is quick.
Town council is very much aware of the turnaround time.
Okay, all right.
But to confirm the purpose of the two meetings, the first one, they're both to have an open discussion about it. The first meeting, the first hearing on the 27th, we can gather, comment, and make any potential changes. But then on February 10th, the ballot has been finalized, and the purpose of that meeting is for us to just make sure that we understand the items and the implications.
Right, which I think is true for both of these, yeah. I mean,
I guess the only thing that we would do after the 27th is clarify something further.
yes.
If it was necessary.
Yes, I think it would be sort of
I
small
understand.
changes.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, so the warning is as the first page that says warning is as presented with the change of 5:30 start time rather than 6.
Can I just make, I'm wordsmithing this a little bit like I always do. The February 10th, 2025, to hear and discuss proposed amendments. That leads me to believe that they can still be changed. I don't think the word proposed, if I'm understanding you correctly, they're not proposed anymore. They are the amendments that are going to appear on the ballot.
Well, they are proposed amendments until such time as they are voted on.
Okay, that's different. Okay. Okay.
Yeah, you don't want to presume. All right. Okay, so discuss proposed amendments because they're proposed on the ballot. Okay. So are we all good with this? Anyone in the public audience want to make any comment on the warning page? No? Okay.
But I have a question on voting. I know probably we can't do anything about it. Village of North Bennington has their own charter. You have to live in the village to vote on it. So why are people in the village of North Bennington voting on our charter?
Because residents of Bennington include the incorporated villages of North Bennington and Old Bennington. They pay into the general fund tax rate and are considered residents of Bennington.
But we can't vote on their charters.
You don't live in North Bennington.
You have to be, incorporated villages act as their own separate government under Vermont law. So those of us who do not live in the village of North Bennington are not considered to be residents of North Bennington. Those residents of North Bennington are also residents of Bennington. And so they are allowed to vote on issues that affect the town.
But they don't have to follow our charter, correct?
As residents of the town of Bennington, they must follow our charter, but their government acts independently under the law.
And they follow their own charter in their village?
Actually, the village doesn't have, well, they may have a small charter.
Old Bennington does not have a charter.
Yes.
North Bennington does.
It does.
There you go. So the village government would act under their charter because it's an incorporated government within the town. It's a throwback, but it does exist. If you recall, Nancy, in our charter, there is language, should the village of North Bennington ever decide to merge, it would vote on the language that's within our charter to become fully residents of the town of Bennington, and they would lose the incorporated village status. Same is true for Old Bennington.
Okay.
Okay. All right, so what we have before us are six with an A and a B on 6. Different measures. Merrill has taken the intent of each one, and so from my perspective, I think it makes sense. I know we've all read these. If there's, it seems that 1 through 5 are pretty straightforward. She's taken the recommendation and put it into legal language. Anything on 1 through 5, and then we'll move to 6. Yes?
This is just a question. The term, Yeah, the 1% tax on non-owner occupied short-term rentals. I know what a short-term rental is, I think. However, it's not really defined. I know people that have rented an Airbnb for a year. So I don't know if that needs to be defined or if it's assumed that a year would not be a short-term rental.
Okay.
Or is there a state definition of short-term rental?
It may be defined in statute because the state does collect a rooms and meals tax on short-term rentals.
Yes. Yes.
So it may be defined by state statute.
Yes.
Perfect. Thank you.
Great, okay, so that takes care of that, all right. Good
And what about the
question.
motels
Pardon?
that are used by the state?
Those aren't short-term rentals.
Yeah, those are considered to be living quarters.
Yeah, with motel vouchers. It's a different definition.
They're not short-term rentals?
No, they're not.
They're not considered that at the present time.
All right, any other 1 through 5, anything?
Yeah, we don't know what the options tax would be spent on.
That would be up to the select board.
But I think
with option
that
tax.
will be a question voters will have.
Well, okay, and that's a great, that's part of the reason to have these hearings is to say, gee, what would we do with that? How much revenue are we talking about? So that's.
What is actually going to appear on the ballot?
This.
Everything?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
So why am I reading youth voters and not 16 and 17-year-old voters?
Because that's how she titled it, and then what it says is, if you read it, for purposes of this section, youth voters means a person who is 16 to 18 years of age and is otherwise qualified to vote in town elections pursuant to 17 VSA, blah, blah, blah. Should it be 16 to 18? I guess, to 18, so that's inclusive of 17.
Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah,
Got it.
I think B is a clear definition of what a youth voter is.
So what she has tried to do is follow sort of, I think, legal language and give them sort of bland titles.
It doesn't say anything that allowing the kids to vote also means they're allowed to serve on select boards and other boards and committees, correct?
No, that's part of the discussion, because what this is a ballot, so what this is a ballot question. The surrounding of, what does a 1% tax mean? There could be discussion about how it hurts people that do short-term rentals. That's outside the question. That's what the hearing's for, is to give us all a chance to think through, what does this really mean if this passes? And so are we in favor of it or not?
No, I'm talking about the kids.
Yeah, but it's same for all of them.
No, I believe when you give the kids the right to vote in Brattleboro, they can automatically serve on the select board.
Well, it
That's
means
not the
many,
case
many
either.
things, but that's not the question.
That's not
The
the
question
question.
is, should 16 and 17-year-olds be able to vote?
And I think
But I
that's
think-
because that's covered under state law already. The fact
But
that
I don't think voters realize that.
Well, that's part of the
That's part
reason
of
to
it,
have
yeah.
public hearing, right?
We should know the answer to that in case we're questioned about it during public hearings.
So, yeah, so I think, actually,
But I think we're
Nancy's
gonna-
keeping that list, I was going to say. Someone
right.
should keep that list.
I think-
Okay.
That's a very good question that we should have the answer to.
Yeah.
We have a hand up down here.
Oh, where? Oh, Jean.
I don't understand why it's 16 to 18-year-olds. 18-year-olds can vote.
Yeah.
Which means 16
and 17.
17-year-olds. This is legal language.
Okay.
The day
know.
you turn 18, you're not 16 to 17.
16 and 17-year-olds.
We wouldn't write it this way, but then we're not lawyers. Okay, so anything from us, 1 through 5?
Yep. Is the same true for non-citizens voting, that they can also serve on the select board? If they have the right to vote?
I believe that is true. I believe the court has already, in the Brattleboro case, but I'm not certain of that, made that determination that if you are eligible to vote on a particular election, then you are also able to serve on the board.
She's asking about non-residents, though, or non-citizens.
I believe it's true for both.
Okay, well, that's another good, write that one down, too. That's a good one to know.
I don't think that's been tested yet for non-resident or non-resident citizen voters.
We should get a legal opinion on it, though.
Has anybody looked at the legal ramifications if a 16 or 17-year-old was on the select board?
There are questions that have been asked, such as are they eligible to sign
Can they be
certain
bonded?
contracts, and can they be bonded? Those questions have been asked, Nancy. No one has specific answers for that, and this is so new that the courts haven't even weighed in on stuff like that.
All right, so any other questions from the board around the language in 1 through 5?
Yep, the liens. Can the town get ahead of a bank on a lien?
If this were to pass at the local level, that would say that yes, it can. However,
in reality,
it is, I hate to say this, but it's unlikely that the legislature will allow this to pass. Because it would make Bennington, in a sense, an island unto itself. However, it is a very strong statement to the legislature that they need to take a look at municipal liens when it comes to properties that are either in violation of some local ordinance. Right now, a bank can foreclose on a property that it has deemed inappropriate. From the owner's perspective, we can have a lien against it because of violations that have existed. Once that foreclosure occurs, our liens are out the window, and we cannot recover any of the legal expenses or any of the efforts that we did. And the foreclosing entity is not necessarily required to repair the properties as would have been done. So it starts the process for us all over again.
So it's a great conversation, even if it doesn't go forward, it's an excellent conversation to be having.
It's a conversation that I think the legislature needs to have about the way it treats municipal liens on properties that are in violation of municipal ordinances.
It's another way for voters of Bennington to be heard at the state level by
If we
just
vote yes.
proposing this.
Right.
Yes.
Yes. If we say this is important to us, then
yes,
it carries weight.
I get it.
All right. Anything else from the select board before we move to the public?
Youth voters. Do we have 16 and 17-year-olds getting property tax and water and sewer bills in their name right now?
Yes.
I don't believe so, unless they own property.
Unless they own properties. Yeah.
Is it legal to send them under 18?
If a 16-year-old owns a piece of property in Bennington and has water and sewer to it, then they would be billed taxes and they would be billed water and sewer. Ownership determines whether or not you are billed.
I'm just trying to figure out if kids under 18 can even enter into legally binding contracts. I'm back to the select board part. I mean, if nobody knows what would happen if they get on the board.
Yeah, I can't speak to that, Nancy. I mean, I think most kids require an adult signature when they take out a loan if they wanted to buy a car.
Yep.
But once they own that vehicle, they become liable and responsible for the activities that they pursue with it.
So let's not get ahead of ourselves. Nancy is making our list of things that we want to follow up on. Those are great questions. They go to the public hearing for us to make sure we fully understand what it means to vote yes or no on any of these. But it's not something that would be included in the legal language on the ballot.
So after tonight, we're not going to discuss this until the public hearing?
Probably not, unless, well, I think the thing that we will do is see what we can learn from the questions that you're asking and others are asking. But yeah, then the public hearing is the first time that we will that we will pursue this. So I think what we're trying to do is make sure we have language that we're comfortable with, and that, and I think as we go along, any questions we have, we should keep a running list so we have the answers. So we have people, we either have the answers or we have people who can talk about it at the public hearing.
But this concerns me. We're going to have 2 weeks for people to find out and understand, because like I said, absentee ballots, February 12th or 13th.
Nancy, this timing is dictated by getting on the March 4th ballot, and you were very, very, very strong in stating that you wanted this timeline. So we have a timeline, so let's so we're doing it.
We have the timeline because I was concerned, when nobody remembered to do this until Maria brought it up, and I think charters are critical, and I don't want to go past town meeting, but this is a worry I brought up, that we wouldn't have time for people to understand.
So we have the time, and there's no reason that people can't do their own research. They're not bound to a public hearing to explore things. They can certainly start exploring beforehand. And the first hearing is on January 27th. I'm going to guess that very little is going to happen between now and New Year's anyway. But people can do their own research, and I hope they will.
I don't think there's...
So can we keep to the topic, please? Anything else on 1 through 5 from select board members? Public. Maria, please. Okay, please come up, state your name, and we are not having the conversation about whether we like things or not at this point. What we are having the conversation about are the first 5 statements that for recommendations.
Understood.
Okay, good.
Maria Corrales, resident Bennington, Vermont. So at the last meeting when Max did her presentation, she referenced the voting of the 16 and 17-year-olds, and she answered a question that I had outstanding, because there's such ambiguity on the 16 and 17-year-olds. And one of the questions I asked was, are 16 and 17-year-old non-residents going to be allowed to vote, or just the residents? And she was very clear. It's her understanding that the question presented on the ballot will be 16 and 17-year-old legal residents of Bennington, Vermont, not non-residents, non-immigrants, all the outstanding questions.
Right.
So instead of having such ambiguity with that statement, why not make it clear on the ballot? 16 and 17-year-olds will be limited to just voting in the town.
Okay, that is what it says. There is a different, there is also a non-citizen voter statement, and that one is very clear as well. Okay. And it says that you have to be at least 18 years old.
No, so not 18, 16 and 17-year-olds?
No, so they're 2 different ballots. So if do you have a copy of this in the packet?
I don't know what's going to be on the ballot yet.
No,
this is the language that we are talking about putting on the ballot.
So so this is in the packet for this week, and number 1 is non-citizen voters, and there is notwithstanding the provisions of 17 VSA Chapter 43, a legal resident who is not a citizen of the United States shall be a legal voter at a local town of Bennington election if the individual meets the following qualifications. 1 is a legal resident of the United States, is not less than 18 years old, and 3 has taken the voter's oath, 4 resides in the town of Bennington as residency is defined, and 6 has registered to vote with the Board of Registration of Voters no later than the deadline established by voter law. So there's that one, and then there's 2, which is youth voters. And that one says, shall the charter of the town of Bennington be amended to add, notwithstanding the provisions of 17 VSA Chapter 43, youth voters shall be legal voters in local town of Bennington elections. For the purposes of this section, youth voter means a person who is 16 to 18 years of age and is otherwise qualified to vote in town elections pursuant to 17 VSA Chapter 43, subchapter blah, blah, blah.
That's the clarification
So the
that you're
first
looking
part
for.
ties to the state constitution, same terms, and the second one's a little different.
One is for non-citizen voters and the other is for youth voters. So they're 2 different ballot items.
But the youth one references the
Must
non-resident.
be a qualified
Right.
voter.
Yeah.
Right, must be qualified to vote in all other, it says exactly, I'm going to read it again. For the purposes of this section, youth voters means a person who is 16 to 18 years of age and is otherwise qualified to vote in town elections. A 16 and 17-year-old who is not a legal resident is not qualified to vote, according to both of these items.
Okay,
The way I understand it.
Yeah, so she did, I think, exactly what you were hoping for.
This
It's
is
very
available to
clear.
read, Maria. It'd be
Yeah.
helpful if you read it. I think you'll appreciate it.
Okay. Other questions, comments on 1 through 5? Yes.
Shirley Adams, Bennington. Just raise a question, and I suspect nobody knows the answer to this, but maybe we can find out. If we raise the town's lien status ahead of a mortgage, could that potentially make it harder for a Bennington resident to get a home mortgage here?
That's a good question.
They already have one, right? So it's probably, in theory, they already have one, so it's probably hard to refinance
Oh,
it.
wait.
Well, if you're a new homeowner.
Actually, Dan may
The
have.
honest answer, the straightforward answer is it may. It could also make it more expensive. So there are those issues.
But I understand the point we're trying to make with the state, and it's probably a good one.
Okay, but yes, all right. So I think this is a good list for us to understand what we're getting ourselves into. Okay, any other questions on 1 through 5? All right. So let's move to 6, and we have 2 versions of 6. The one called Civilian Board is a sort of massaged version of the original recommendation, and this comes from the Charter Review Committee, and it says, shall the charter of the town of Bennington be amended to add a section 103 to 303.9 to subchapter 3 as follows: appoint a civilian board which shall have such authority and responsibility related to the police department as may be delegated from time to time by resolution of the select board. Notwithstanding the foregoing, the select board shall not delegate authority relating to disciplinary actions concerning law enforcement personnel. So that's one version. The other version, 6A, I'm calling it, civilian board, and it says to investigate, and I think that was added to distinguish between the two. Civilian board, shall the charter of the town be amended to delegate the responsibility to review video footage, transcripts, and other materials following an investigation of a complaint against the police department to the existing Community Policing Advisory Review Board or to another board established by the Select Board to replace the CPARB. So those are 2 versions, and for a little background, because I think for all of us 2 years is a really long time. Back on March 11th, 2022, the Safety and Equity Task Force, which Clark was a member of, released its final report to the Select Board, and at that time, I'm thinking Jean, Tom, Sarah, and I were on that board. Is that true? 2022. That's only 2 years ago. Yeah. Okay. I know. So the majority of the board has seen this memo, and I'm thinking that the task force also saw it because there was, and we talked about it at a select board meeting. But she released this memo, and it says, beginning of paragraph 2, the report proposes a complaint process for CPARB to hear complaints against police officers, review of complaints following investigation by the Bennington Police Department, and issue a report both to the complainants citizens and to the public. And then paragraph 3 says, it is important to remember that Vermont follows Dillon's rule, which was news to all of us, which means that municipalities receive all of their legal authority from the Vermont legislature. Under Dillon's rule, local government has 3 sources of authority. 1, those granted in express words in a statute. 2, those necessarily or fairly implied in or incident to the powers expressly granted. And 3, those essential to the declared object and purposes of the municipality. Not all states follow Dillon's rule. For example, the state of Massachusetts has adopted a version of home rule, which departs from Dillon's rule, which allows municipalities much broader authority to adopt ordinances, bylaws, and to amend their own charters than Vermont municipalities have. So paragraph 4 begins with, this means that in order for a municipality to create an ordinance, a board, or a committee, there must be statutory basis for it. And so then she went on, and this was a surprise to all of us. I have not identified any source of law that would authorize a town to create a community policing advisory and review board as proposed in the report. In my view, the town does not have the power to create an independent board as proposed in the report. Such authority could be created by the legislature, either by statute or by approval of a charter amendment following the charter amendment process. So that is why 6 is on here. At present, the responsibility to review a complaint against the police department that has been investigated by the police lies with the select board. And having done this once, we realized that the select board is not the best entity to be doing it. It requires a lot of training, and it is much better served. We're much better served by having a board that's trained that does this, and that was part of the original intent of CPARP. So that is why we have, that is the value of this 6th recommendation, and with that, I would open it up to anyone who would like to speak to either one of these recommendations. Okay. Clark, go ahead.
Yeah. Again, the second one we spoke of, and as I think I've said before, the critical element in this whole process, in my mind, is the word review. We had very long, protracted discussions as this committee was coming up with this, and I think the select board also looked at it, and I think Mr. Hurd even piped in to make sure that it in fact was not review but advocacy or active investigation. And I think in my mind we need to go with our intent to have an organization that would review the findings of the board, the police department, forward their concurrence or non-concurrence with the issue to the board after they review the pertinent laws, police policies, and procedures to ensure compliance. I think that's the most important part. And looking at, again, the second part, it basically, in my mind, it expands what is available to CPARB to conduct their review. And in listening to all the different conversations over the past few months on this, I think, again, we should focus on review and advisory. We reviewed it and we advise concurrence or non-concurrence with the findings and put it at the feet of the select board to act upon the information.
Okay. So are you favoring 6A at this point?
Correct. Yeah, the second one. I favor that. I think that's more direct and in keeping with what I believe was the intent of the committee that helped form CPARB and the select board that accepted their recommendations.
Okay, great, thank you.
I'm confused. Are you in favor of the second one or the first one?
The second was what I believe.
Okay, I just want to make sure that's what I heard you say. Does anyone think we could, instead of civilian board to investigate, civilian board complaint review process?
So yes, I actually sent that recommendation, but it didn't make it into the packet.
Okay.
But it could be, it just says civilian board. I mean, also, I think she was just trying to distinguish between civilian board A and civilian board B.
Okay.
Do you want civilian board review or civilian board? I mean, it seems bland as what, what she's after, but, yeah, I've scribbled out investigate on my copy. Just left it as civilian board.
We're still focused on 6A?
Well, yeah, we're still looking at 6A, yeah. If we took out, instead of civilian board, to investigate, because the point is not to investigate, it's to review and
Right,
investigation.
so I'm going to stick by civilian board complaint review process, or complaint review.
Complaint review, okay. We can try that with, okay. The other thing I think is important to note on this is that this is under the select board section, so the select board can delegate that responsibility. If somebody was wild about wanting to be the select board, to be that review board, like first talk to some of us, but this can be delegated, so we can hold it if we think this is a great thing for the select board to be doing, okay? So it gives us the power to delegate. It doesn't require us to delegate, I guess that's.
Right now, we don't have the power to delegate.
Correct, and I desperately want it.
That's important to know.
So right now, if there's a complaint against a police officer, and if it isn't Bennington, it's another town, do all the select boards, do they do the investigation, or doesn't someone come in from the state and do it?
No,
There's
so
two different ways
there's
that this goes.
Yeah, there's a process. So if a complaint is made against the police department, stop me when I say something bad, Stu. What happens first is there's an internal investigation. If the police department finds that there was wrongdoing, then there is a process for them to follow. They can kick it to the criminal justice board, if they're the state board, for them to further the investigation if there's something really off. If it's something minor, then it can be handled in-house. If they investigate and they find no wrongdoing, then the next step would be for that to go to CPARB, go to another board that could check their work, basically.
Okay, so the towns that don't have the CPARB, what do they do?
Well, I have no.
Most don't have
so most of
CPARB.
them are using state police. I'm thinking most people, yeah, besides Bennington and Manchester. I don't know what, Manchester may use the town manager, which is what we used to do, and we're advised that we should not do that.
So we could use the state police then?
No, we couldn't. No, I'm saying that towns like Shasberry and Pownell don't have their own police departments, so
If
it's a different
there is
process.
an incident that may involve a local police officer that in fact may rise to the level of a crime, in many instances, a local police department will turn that investigation over to the state police or another law enforcement entity, so that there is can be no charge of failure to proceed properly. If there is a crime committed and it is determined that there is one, that automatically goes to the Criminal Justice Council. And they then review to see whether or not that officer's certification shall be revoked. If there's a crime, the crime will be handled by the state's attorney's office, but the certification of the officer itself may be, in fact, dealt with by the Criminal Justice Council. Most towns, I think, who have police departments investigate all complaints against the police departments internally, unless there is a designated authority.
And this would still be the same. They would still investigate internally.
That's correct.
Yes.
That's correct, except in our case where there is an appeal of a police finding to the select board, who is the governing body, that under statute has the authority to review these processes. In our case, we are creating or attempting to create a civilian board that would have that authority.
And that was part of the intent of setting up the civilian board or community board.
But we could still, I just think it's going to open a massive can of worms.
Well, it already hasn't. I mean, it literally.
But the law doesn't allow them to get into the confidential police files and go out and hire attorneys and lawyers and investigators.
We're not even suggesting an investigation, and that is.
But they can.
So the keyword is review, and so in the case where the select board, where there was an appeal and the select board was put in that position, what we reviewed was all the body cam footage, car cam and body cam footage. We reviewed all of the transcripts. We reviewed any witness statements that were made, and we did that with the help of town staff, the police officers, and also council. And it took us a really long time, in part because it was the first time we were doing it, so we literally were making up a process as we went along. And there were very few people to give us guidance because we were doing it at the time. It wasn't like we were trained ahead of time. So what we are saying is, to avoid getting ourselves in trouble, it would be much better to have the CPARB, which was created in part for this purpose, to be the entity that's trained, so that if there is an appeal of the results of a police investigation, that the data can be reviewed. There is nothing in here that allows them to do an independent investigation. That was never the intent. Yeah, Jean.
I want to preface what I'm going to say was, I'm not assuming this would ever happen, but if the CPAR board reviewed a complaint that had not been referred to another level of law enforcement, the state, to do a more thorough investigation, would they be allowed to say, we think this needs to go? Mm-hmm. They can, okay.
Yeah, and then that would follow a process. Yeah, so okay. They could say, we do think that there's something here.
There could be a crime.
And that is part of the reason to have that board.
Right. Yeah. So basically, they would review the police investigation and then make a recommendation to the select board to actually take action, to take it to that next level. Because it's important to remember that there can be misconduct or violations of policy that don't rise to a criminal level, but they still need to be addressed. So if it's not a criminal act, it wouldn't go to the state committee, but the select board could still take action and direct the police chief to do something else through the town manager.
And what does the police department feel about this?
Well, the police department has I think, a fairly good relationship working with CPARB over the last 2 years. I think there may be some concerns about individuals, unless they're trained properly, to look at video footage and transcripts and other materials. But I think if they are trained properly and are, in fact, sworn to, I'll call it not secrecy, but confidentiality, then I think this is something that they would get accustomed to.
They'd rather it be someone other than the select board, is my guess. But, yeah. So the question here is, do we? I mean, obviously, I agree with Clark. I think the civilian board complaint review is what we intended originally, and this is the language that we were given.
I think this language solves for that, 6A.
Okay. Anything else from us? All right. Anyone in the public? Yes, Maria.
Again, Maria Corrales, resident of Bennington, Vermont. So I made a formal request for records from the police department, the chief of police, for the body cam and the cruiser cam, and the 911 call, simply to dispute a section on an accident. 3 times. He received a copy as well. Tomorrow's the day. They want to show it to me visually, but I need a copy for our judge. What am I supposed to do, go to court and tell the judge, sorry, I couldn't get it? because the police department didn't give it to me. So I believe CPARB should have some sort of authority to enforce something that's my fundamental right. It's only a copy. I'm willing to pay anything that's needed. So why should the citizens have to fight and fight and fight and fight with the police department for something that's so fundamental? It doesn't make sense. And then when I go to the state level, they said, well, if he doesn't give it to you, you can bring it up and make it a civil lawsuit. Why should I have to sue the police department to just get a copy of a cruiser cam or a police cam? And the town manager has a copy, and he has power. We all know that. So he should be able to tell the police chief of police, just give her a copy. She isn't asking you to write anything, rewrite anything, or change the verbiage that you put in the report. She just needs a copy. So I think CPARB should have some authority to be able to enforce something that's, if it's a simple request and the person wants and they have the right to have it, I think CPARB should have some authority, some push.
Okay. Thank you.
I have to step in, Maria. You did have an opportunity to meet with the chief. He did schedule an appointment with you. You were not able to keep that appointment, I understand.
The receptionist did that, and I followed his instruction after the fact. He said, Maria, give me 1 day. And we have follow-up correspondence where you know.
Understood.
3 days later, we had follow-up correspondence, and we said, let's put that aside.
All right. I'm going to put it. Okay. We're back to the agenda item. All right. So anyone else want to speak to 6 or 6A? No? Okay.
The civilian board is totally separate from the select board, correct? They do not.
CPARB. It's CPARB, yeah. Well, they're not totally, I mean, they are a town board. We appointed the members, they have terms, and, you know, they have to follow open meeting law, they...
No, but I mean, they're pretty much independent from the select board.
After being appointed, yes.
Yeah, yeah, and there's a liaison, Jean is the liaison this year, so that if there are any questions that they have easy access to information. Yep. Okay, so, all right, so that's 1 through 6.
Do we want to, are we in a situation where we want to strike 6?
6 and keep 6A?
Keep 6A, just so we don't debate it again?
Yes.
I agree.
Well, can we, do we need a vote on this, or are we in agreement?
Are we in agreement that 6A was the language that we all had hoped for? I see it. You nod.
Yes,
You said
yes.
yes. Nancy,
Yes.
you're the only one out.
6 or 6A?
I just want to make sure this is done right. I don't want to get the wrong people on a board and end up with no police department.
Well, Nancy, you interviewed some of them.
That's this board's responsibility on an annual basis to interview and appoint.
I just wondered.
And we appointed someone to that, maybe 1 or 2 this year, I can't remember. 1, maybe. Yeah. So this is not...
Enough language in here to cover everything we need to cover?
Yeah, so this is amending the charter. There is, if you go to the CPARB page, you will see their charge. And I know that this is their 3rd year, and so they were originally going to come this evening, and it seemed too complicated given we were doing this. So they also have some thoughts about changes to their charge, but we are the people who give the charge to a town board. So that is something that we'll discuss, and I think they may be on they're on the first meeting in January as well.
But tonight's discussion was the result of the Charter Review Committee's work.
Right. So this is not the be-all of what CPARB is. All this is doing is adding into the charter the ability for the select board to delegate the responsibility of reviewing an appeal of a police investigation of a complaint against the police
This is like the
department.
30,000-foot view, and then the resolution, which is coming, will get into the nuts and bolts. But this is not that. It's not supposed to be that.
Yeah, this is just charter language that gives us the authority to do something. All right.
I'm striking 6.
Okay, all right, so it sounds like we're all okay with striking 6 and keeping 6A and changing the title, so this would be a mayoral question, to Civilian Board Complaint Review.
That's your decision.
Okay,
That's
all right.
That's not.
Okay.
I think
That's
you
what I
just use that as a title. The language that will appear on the charter is
On the ballot.
question, shall, and what falls below. The titles won't be there.
Oh, the titles won't be there. Oh, okay,
No.
okay, I didn't realize that. Okay, so good. So we won't, that's why they're bland. Okay, so in the language, it says that we would delegate the responsibility to the existing Community Policing Advisory Review Board or to another board established by the Select Board to replace the Community Policing Advisory Review Board. So it means that it wouldn't just arbitrarily go to, the
Planning.
flower and bloom, the Planning Commission. I mean, that it's going to go to a community policing advisory review board of some sort. Okay, so it's staying in that arena. So that's
sorry.
why it's not specific. This charter piece is in the section under Select Board responsibilities. So we're giving ourselves a responsibility or the ability to delegate.
And the exact hows and parameters of that would be set by a future select board once this is in place.
Yep.
If there was no CPAR board in the future, would it come back to the select board?
No, it says that CPARB or another board established by the select board to replace the CPARB. And if there, so it's it's our choice. So if we decided
we didn't want anything,
then it would be ours, because,
I
because
think
it is
that
ours.
the understanding is that if there wasn't a CPARB, there would be a later version of somebody.
No,
that was
I understand
trained.
that, but in the event that didn't happen, it
Yes.
comes back here.
It
Okay.
falls back here, yeah.
Yeah, we're ultimately responsible. Okay. Okay, so, all right, so are we set then? We've changed the start time, and we have struck 6 and kept 6A. Set?
And I would then need a motion from the board to adopt the warning as proposed.
Are we automatically putting everything on the ballot?
I think so.
Or are we going to decide?
Well, I would certainly be in favor of putting everything on the ballot. I think we put together, we interviewed a lot of people, put together a really good charter review committee that met
Okay, but let's remember the process.
weekly.
They give it to us, we look at it, and we decide what's going to go forward. Oh, sorry. They gave their work to us, we look over it, and we decide which, if any, we move forward.
Yeah, I'm in favor of moving forward with all of them. I think that the voters should have the opportunity to speak on these issues, and there has been a lot of conversation already. And, I think the important piece is that we make sure that the questions that people have are things that we can answer. So I think we would encourage all of you to submit questions through the comment line so that we can get as much research done ahead of time. I think there's quite a bit of information in the Charter Review Committee report, but as questions come up that aren't already addressed, we should make sure we do it.
If I could just
go
say,
ahead.
I thought that our discussion tonight about the language was our opportunity to speak in favor or against posing any of these items, and so I'm in favor of keeping them intact, if that is a discussion for tonight.
Yeah, it is. I mean, it is a discussion, because once we vote on the warning, then that's what goes on the public hearing.
Then that making that clear, we have a motion? Do we have a motion?
We don't have a motion yet, I don't think.
Oh, I think Stu said we needed one.
Yes, Stu didn't make a motion yet.
Yes, we do need one. We don't have one yet.
Are we ready for
So
a
you're voting
motion?
to move it all forward as one package then?
One package,
This is the warning.
individual items on the ballot, which is what you said you wanted.
I just want to make sure, so when I vote no, it's because there are things I don't want on the ballot,
Well, now's your time to speak.
I thought we were discussing that along the way.
That's,
so.
oh, now's your time to
That's why I
speak.
asked you, are we
Yeah.
going to vote? I thought we were going to decide, are we putting all, some, none?
Nancy, now is the time to speak to that.
Okay.
Okay.
16 and 17-year-olds are a no. And because I don't know where the options tax would go, I'd want to know that ahead of time. That would be a no.
Okay, so there
know
are two.
everybody else is gonna be
Are you
yes.
voting, so are you saying that you personally would vote no, or are you saying that the voters should not have the opportunity to vote on those items? And we should take it off of the ballot?
That's what I'm saying, because normally the
Which are you
select board- Normally, the select board would vote on each thing. Do you want it to go forward or not?
I'm saying, so are you saying that you want to strike
16 and 17
youth voters and 1% tax from the warning and the ballot, so that
Yes.
voters don't have a chance to vote on them?
Right.
Okay. All right. Other people's opinions?
Mine's been heard.
Okay, mine too.
Yeah, I don't see anything here I'm not comfortable passing to the voters at this point. There were some things that were discussed in the charter review that I don't think I would have been. I don't need to go into that right now, but what they finally came up with, I'm comfortable passing along to the voters.
Okay. Clark?
We've got the information that the folks we tasked to come up with recommendations have in front of us. I think we've gone through those areas, and we've made the necessary our desired amendments or changes. So I say let the will of the people speak.
Good. Jean?
Same here.
Great. Okay. All right. So now we're ready for a motion? Did we make it already?
If we need one, I'm glad to make it.
Okay.
I make a motion that we pass the language, I'm sorry, guys, that the Charter Review Committee recommended with the discussed amendments tonight.
Which would be the changing the time on the warning and the alternate language on the 6th.
Right, so changing the time on the warning from 6 PM to 5:30 for the 2 public hearings, and adopting 6A, which we labeled 6A Civilian Board Complaint Review.
Okay.
That's the motion.
All right. Is there a second?
Second.
Great. Any further discussion? All right, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed, please say no. Any abstentions? All right.
I'm going to circulate the signature page.
Okay.
For your signature. I've dated it the 9th of December.
Thank you very much.
And hopefully, we can have everything up on the wall for the public hearing so people can see what we're talking about.
Okay, that's, yeah. Yes, all right. Oh, that brings us to the manager's report. Is that where we are?
I think it is.
All right. All right, so let's start from the top. All right, so we wanted to actually make a motion on the ethics liaison, if we can.
Excuse me. What I attempted to do here was appoint Michelle Johnson to be the person who receives the concerns and complaints. I was not intending to appoint her as the ethics liaison. There are 2 positions that are created under the law. They can be the same person.
Oh, please, let's let them be. Okay.
But if you wish, at this point, because it's been brought to my attention that there was concern that I had appointed a liaison, which would have potentially violated the law. If you wish to appoint Michelle Johnson, both the ethics liaison and officer to receive complaints, I would be happy with that.
All right, well, so what we're talking about is that there is a new Vermont State Ethics Commission that's been created, and each municipality is required to appoint an ethics liaison as a point of contact with the Ethics Commission, as well as we need somebody who is actually receiving ethics complaints. And what it says is each municipality acting through its legislative body shall designate an employee as its liaison to the State Ethics Commission. If a municipality does not have any employees, we have close to 100, the legislative body shall designate one of its members as its liaison to the State Ethics Committee. And this needs to be done by January 1st. I would entertain a motion for Michelle Johnson to be both the ethics liaison and the officer to receive ethics complaints, because otherwise it's going to be really tough.
I second that motion for the point of discussion.
Okay. All right. So if they're two different people, then it means that information from the Ethics Commission is going to one person, but the person receiving the complaints and having to handle them is a different person. So
the law does provide for that.
Yeah,
I don't know that it's a good way to do it, but
just
the law
because
does
you can
provide.
doesn't mean you should. Okay. All right. So other people's thoughts on this?
I think Michelle will be fine, but does she have time?
That is a great question, Nancy, it was none of, I would say, given this statute, and I sometimes question whether the legislature reads thoroughly what they've created. This is going to create a lot of work for an individual in our employ to do. Michelle is the ideal appointment person because she is our human resources director and has a real professional attitude and responsibility to the employees who are the ones that we are mainly concerned about. This also law applies to you as well. As select board members, it applies to planning commission members, it applies to DRB members. So all of those complaints would come into the town employee and be dealt with within her office. Now, will she need staff people at some point in the future to make sure that she keeps the records properly, gets those records to the Ethics Commission when required? More than likely.
Yep.
But the law has been passed. I suspect that many towns in the state will not be in compliance January 1, 2025, but with this motion and a vote in the positive way, we will be in compliance. Dan has been working fairly religiously to develop a policy for investigating complaints. We're looking at a policy that will be along the lines of the same investigating policy that the police department has already adopted, so that we'll be able to handle those complaints fairly, effectively, and with the appropriate respect for privacy of our employees and our board members.
And this was why a lot of groups who supported it were unhappy the legislature didn't fund it, because this is going to cost all across the state at the local level money.
So let's stick with the topic, though.
Well, but
Okay.
I brought this up in the summer, Jeannie, because I knew this was going to be an issue.
But this isn't an issue. It's a law now, and all we're doing, we have a motion on the table, and I'm sure our representative in the back is paying attention, that we need to put someone in place. So this is discussion over whether our HR director can be the liaison and the person receiving
I'm
ethics complaints.
asking, is she going to need help? I don't want her being there 14
She's
hours a
accepted
day.
it. She's willing to do it.
She's willing to do it.
Yeah.
We'll determine whether or not help is required as we see what is created once January 1st, 2025 comes along.
Well, hopefully there aren't a ton of ethics violations, so we'll see.
Well, yeah, the law is
complaint, too.
incredibly broad.
That's true.
It's incredibly broad, and so anyone who is aggrieved by a decision of an employee or of a board member could bring an ethics violation claiming some sort of conflict of interest, and that would require an investigation, documentation, the whole thing. It would have been great if this, I don't disagree that municipal boards and commissions and employees should be held to a high standard, but this standard is so incredibly broad that it's going to open up, I think, a can of worms for all of us involved here.
All right, other thoughts?
Yeah, well, Mr. Hurd, I agree with you. One of my concerns would be is a single person, both being the person who receives it and processes it. I would hope that we'd have I wouldn't say like a firewall. It's the person who receives these concerns, reviews them, and forwards them to the individual who acts upon them. And, maybe the idea of we're a relatively small community, it's not an issue, but we have Michelle who, as I don't need to say, is excellent at what she does, and it just might add a little more burden to her if we could somehow lighten the load and at the same time have distinct firewalls where people receiving the complaints and the people processing the complaints.
Clark, can I just clarify? The liaison is not the person, so the two positions are the person who receives correspondence from the Vermont State Ethics Commission. Okay. That's the liaison. The other is the person who receives the complaints, investigates the complaints. And Dan is working on a policy and is walking toward the podium as we speak.
I just want to, so I spent the last few days reading and rereading this, so I just want to make sure there's no confusion about these two positions. They could, and I agree that they should be one person just because I don't know how you cross-communicate effectively. I think there needs to be a lot of delegation, don't get me wrong, of investigations, et cetera, but I think there needs to be one person to be a clearinghouse. So to explain the two positions, the State Ethics Commission liaison, as you've mentioned, does coordinate and receive information and get training from the State Ethics Commission. But what they also do, they will receive any complaints regarding the municipality that go to the State Ethics Commission. That's one way to file a complaint. Another way to file a complaint is directly to the person or to the municipality that the complaint is being made against. So it's kind of an odd bifurcation. You can get a complaint through the Ethics Commission that was routed to them, or you can get one that was filed directly with the municipality. So it would be kind of odd to have one person receiving one set of complaints, another person receiving another set of complaints, just because of a difference of where they happen to come in the door. So that's why we think, and again, it doesn't, you folks have the final authority to guide us on this. We think it would be best to be in one person, whether that's Michelle or somebody else, that's fine. I do expect that, given the broadness of this and the fact that it not only applies to employees, but every single appointed and elected official, that this may become a burden pretty quickly, and we're going to have to figure a way to delegate this throughout, either the staff or other third parties, unfortunately. I think what you folks want to also think about is, if there's a complaint made about one of you folks, we certainly don't feel comfortable having our staff investigating a select board member. So that's going to be part of the policy, is how does the select board investigate its own folks, or somebody from the DRB or from the Planning Commission, because that really can't be an employee doing that. Maybe we have to figure out a way to pay a third party to do that. I don't know. It's all going to be a lot happening in the future. Yep. We have zero guidance from the Vermont Leagues of Cities and Towns. We have very minimal guidance from the State Ethics Commission. This is all evolving. We are promised more information, more guidance. So we're going to do the best we can to be as ready as we can on January 1st. But I suspect as the months pass that we'll see a lot of evolving changes as we're given guidance on how to proceed with this. And to be frank, we're hopeful that the legislature will fix some of the issues that we identify.
And what happens on January 2026? There's some things we start January 1st this year, and then there's more next year?
Yeah, so there's also a training requirement for all of you folks, and for all department managers, and for DRB folks, anybody who is a quasi-judicial board, to take training regarding this by September 30 of 2025, I believe. And that training isn't even available yet. So, but we do have, again, they've given some time for that to roll out, and the State Ethics Commission is working on that training. So we don't even have that, and we don't have a template for procedures and processes yet from the Ethics Commission or the PLCT. So we'll have to make up our own, and we'll evolve with their guidance.
All right, so for the purposes right now, it's the stay tuned piece between the policy and hopefully what the legislature will do to rethink some areas of this. But we do need to have a liaison and a person to receive ethics complaints in place by January 1st. So this would be our moment.
We're still in discussion.
We're still in discussion.
So what I understood you to say, Dan, is that we know absolutely nothing except for the deadline.
I would stop short of saying that. We do have a statute As you know, statutes are like charters. They're pretty broad language, and then it really comes down to the procedures and policies that flow out of those that are endorsed by the State Ethics Commission, perhaps given guidance from the Vermont League of Cities and Towns. We'll also be working with our attorney. I've already alerted Merrill that we want to have her advice on this policy before the end of the year so that early next year we can present something to you folks that you can adopt and say, hey, this may change, but this is what we're going with for now. So we're working towards all that, and because it's new, because it's never been, and no other towns have done this before, we don't have anything, no earlier guidance or precedent to go by. So we're going to do our best to come up with what we think the statute says, and VLCT and or the State Ethics Commission may say, no, we really think this is a best practice, and then we'll adapt.
Yes, I think I was being a little flippant, and I apologize. But the bottom line is the statute says we have to appoint this person by January 1st.
Yes. We're in violation. So
whatever actions we take today, I guess we can maybe preface it or codify it that this is an interim decision, that we're more than willing to make changes dependent upon the statutory requirements and even our own internal workings on it, that nothing we're doing is cast in stone.
Right.
Yes.
Right. She's saying yes to a position, if offered, she's saying yes to a position that she's not sure what it entails yet.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes to all of that.
All right, so do we have a motion?
We have a motion. Let me just make a statement, if I could. And this is important. The appointment of an employee to the new State Ethics Committee is required, right? It's an employee.
That's correct.
So this is important for the public here and at home and this board to hear me out for a second. Per the town charter, the management of town employees is the responsibility of the town manager. Therefore, it only makes sense that the town manager is acting within his responsibilities when he's announcing this appointment. It's also clear that additional guidance is necessary. We talked a lot about that tonight. But it was overheard in public between the time that the packet went out and tonight's meeting that there are negative posts on Facebook pages, one of those being a board member's Facebook page. So let me just be clear. No one usurped the select board power. No one violated any state or federal laws, as we've been accused of doing on this topic. And Chair Jenkins is not a tyrant, Vice Chair Woods is not a crook, and the manager was simply doing his job. I needed to have that on the record because this board has been accused of improprieties inappropriately.
All right. Do we have a motion on the floor?
We do.
We do. All right. Are we ready to vote?
Please.
All right. All in favor of appointing...
Oh, okay.
Go ahead. What?
No, I just want to make sure, I asked him what the motion was, and that he said Tom just told me to appoint Michelle, but I was wondering, in fact, the idea of understanding this is an interim issue. This is not an...
Well, it always is, right? I mean, do you want to amend it to say until such time where additional information?
I think your point is that it's always subject to change once a policy is fully vetted. This board has the authority to make a change. I don't think that we should go into this with a temporary measure. That's my opinion.
Is there any, Stu, is there any concern from your end if we appoint her to meet this January 1st deadline and then we find out the job is very different? I mean, I don't know who would be better to do this than
We'll just
Michelle,
have to get her help.
honestly.
That's what it's going to be.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a budgetary issue. It's not a person issue.
I think by the end of February, so many towns are going to be calling the legislature. They're going to have to do something.
Okay. So you're feeling like we're okay to appoint her?
Well, no, I just want to make sure she has help if she needs it. I don't want her to be in there till
I
midnight.
guarantee you she'll have help if she needs it.
Yes.
Okay.
And Clark is correct. I mean, this is, in a sense, subject to change because as the Ethics Commission rolls out its rules and regulations, we may find ourselves having to change not only personnel, but increase personnel, do a whole host of things that we have not contemplated at this time. So,
So we've got two assistants sort of in the wings here, all right, for budget. All right, so are we ready to vote with that?
Excuse me?
Yes.
Are we including interim decision in the motion?
No, we are not.
All right.
All right. So what do we think the motion is? Just to be
To
clear.
appoint Michelle for both positions.
Okay, thank you. All right. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, that's unanimous. Wonderful.
and then there is another action item that I was informed about. I had assumed that the board had changed the December 18th listening session to January 22nd, but I understand that that was not formally acted upon, so I'm asking the board to approve listening sessions for January 22nd, which is the third Wednesday in January, and February 19th from 6 p.m. until 7 or thereafter, and that the December 18th session would be canceled.
Okay. Do we want to keep, are we okay with changing the dates, and are we okay with keeping this to about an hour, or do we want to take off the 7 p.m. piece?
Is it appropriate to leave it open-ended since people have stated more than once that they felt rushed? Do we need to commit an end time according to warning, or? No.
Okay, so it can just say 6 p.m.?
I'm in favor of leaving it off.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So, all right. So anyone want to make a motion for when the next listening session is?
I'll make a motion that we cancel the December 18th listening session and schedule the next two, January 22nd and February 19th, both starting at 6 p.m.
Great. That sounds great. Anyone want to second that?
Second.
Okay, great. Any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right.
Stu, I also thought that 12:18 meeting was canceled, so you and I were in the same delirious bubble.
I read
guess.
Nancy's excellent minutes.
And so, just for informational purposes, very quickly, there has been some conversation from folks who are interested in donating to the town in honor of Gracie following her passing. These donations will be placed in a reserve for our K-9 training site in her honor, and that would be a designated reserve because the donations would be specific to that purpose. Ben High did receive an additional $250,000 in Vermont Community Development Program funds, bringing a total award to $1.25 million for that project, which we will hopefully be discussing some point in the future. And the town has been found eligible for the BRELA program at Ben High, should the project go forward. So we're happy with that. That gives us that liability protection once the corrective action plan is completed. And the rest, I think, is just normal information.
Yeah, I do want to, and related to that, looking at the community development report, it looks like Shannon has brought in $3.4 million in grants for Ben High and $1.7 million to the recovery houses. I mean, it's pretty phenomenal, plus $200,000 for Riverwalk and $220,000 for skate park. I mean, like, they know us upstate, which is pretty amazing amount of money.
If you see Shannon on the street, thank her, please.
Excuse me, Mr. Hurd, I have a question here. On the monies we were just discussing, I know in the past, in speaking with Mr. Hale, there's been discussions of the different grants in this funding line. Is that where this money is going, into those funding lines?
Yes.
That Mr. Hale's speaking of?
Yes.
Okay.
And they'll all be detailed in his presentation.
All right, thank you.
Can I ask? Oh, go ahead.
The grant, $125,000 for pickleball courts at Willow Park?
Yeah, that is an application, yes.
Okay. concerned about the hundreds of thousands of dollars that our taxpayers have to pay at the rec center and the pool and Gate Street? Whoops, sorry.
Well, this is interesting enough. We have been approached by a number of community members, a fairly large number of community members, who are currently engaged in pickleball team competitions. We've constructed a temporary court up at Willow Park and to try to handle some of this activity. I know that the former Paradise had a pickleball court that is used heavily, and we have people in the community traveling to other towns where indoor pickleball facilities exist. So all we're attempting to do is see if in fact the monies could be available through an application to support the construction of outdoor pickleball facilities, additional outdoor pickleball facilities at Willow Park. Yes.
But is anybody looking for grants for the rec center?
No.
Well, I'm sure that Shannon's looking all the time. I mean, sure.
But we don't have, right now, we don't have a project at the rec center that we're pursuing with grant funds.
Because much of that activity is moving to Ben High, so.
Well, we don't know what's going to happen with the Ben High.
Oh, Nancy.
Well, anytime you want to put it on the agenda, and let's talk money for real.
Okay. Anything else? I have a question about there was a public comment that came in about whether we can, and I think this was also said here, whether we can plow the bike paths so that runners can continue activity, walking. I will say, when Michael's in wheelchair, we used to go on the bike path, and that was really lovely to do in the winter because there are not many places, that people can get out.
Initially, my response would be, we don't have the staff to do so. Okay. Otherwise, we would be doing it now.
I see.
So I think that's the issue. It's a staffing issue for us. I saw the comment come through late today, so we'll take a look at it and see what we might be able to do in the future, depending on how those paths interconnect, and maybe there's something we can do for a portion of the trail, but not necessarily all of the trail.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm speaking off the top of my head here.
Right. I mean, it would be helpful because it is the way to get to stores also without having to go on Benmont.
Especially those parts of the path within the urban area.
Yep. Okay.
Understood.
Okay. Other comments in the manager's report? We looked at the permits, right? Really strong. Looking at the summary of building permits issued, it's amazing. I expected them to be down rather than up, but they're actually very strong. So, okay, with nothing else there, upcoming agendas. So our next meeting is next week, right? And it is really just to do warrants, December 16th. And then we won't be back until January 13th, I believe, and the two things that I know that we have on there is one, taking up the procurement policy, and the other is the Woodford Packers Roaring Branch Floodplain Restoration Project is coming then. And then, so that's what I know, yeah.
I have an idea for an agenda item, and I'm not saying it has to happen or not, but I've been thinking that we may want to consider going back to a policy that a former chair used, oh my gosh, I'm going to say 6 years ago. That's somewhat of a guess. So Tom Jacobs, when we were voting as a board on something that he deemed to be very important, he would go down the line and we had to share how we were going to be voting and why. And it was incredibly valuable as board members to hear the thoughts of each other. and it was incredibly important for the public to understand why we're voting the way we're voting. I've been really confused many times by the way some of us vote. I have no idea why you're voting the way you're voting. You don't know why I'm voting the way I'm voting either. I'm just sort of blindsided, like, I want to know what you know that I don't know that's causing you to vote the way you're voting. So I'm just throwing it out there. Maybe it's something we should discuss at some point in the future.
All right.
If nobody wants to, I'm not going to, beat a dead horse. But anyway, I'm just throwing that idea out there.
No, I think it was very useful, and it helped inform our own decision-making.
And it helps you, at least it helps me, to have to verbalize it, to actually create, and it's hard being the first one to have to answer because, if you're the last one, you've had time to think about what you're going to say. But it really helps clarify your thought process when you're forced to verbalize why you're voting the way you're going to vote.
I can see the value in understanding each other's interpretation of the information, too. It may not be that we know something that the other member doesn't know, but we've interpreted it differently, and that it could be helpful to clear that up. So I appreciate that.
Yeah, and we all have a different perspective, and that's the beauty of being on a board, is everybody looks at the same issue from many different vantage points, and that's something that I'm not able to do. I know how I look at things, but I don't know how other people process information and come to the conclusion they've come to.
All right. So we will put it on the list and find an agenda in the upcoming months to have that conversation.
If you feel it's worthy of an agenda.
No, I agree. I remember Tom doing that, and I think it was very, very helpful.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. All right. So, other business. Tom, you want to start tonight?
Sure. Let me think. Small Business Saturday. I had the pleasure of volunteering at the BBC table on Main Street. It was great to see so many kids out visiting Santa, so many adults out shopping, people in the restaurants. It was a busy day. It was a lovely day, and I think everybody that participated had a really nice time. And I just wanted to thank the folks at the BBC. I think they did a great job.
Oh,
Sorry.
Hi, yeah. I don't have anything other than to echo what Tom said. Come downtown, spend money, make our town grow.
I'm going to say this once, and I'm probably going to say it at every meeting. If you're looking for good information, Facebook is not the place to go. That's it.
That's it? Okay. Nancy?
Reserve funds. I think we need to get it on an agenda, put them on the wall, go through them. There's probably some we can get rid of. I know there's some that we need. But I'm interested in understanding the money, and if there's money that we're not going to use in the near future, why keep it sitting there?
Well,
I understand we need it for the...
All of the reserve funds that have been created, that entire lengthy list in the general fund, we also have smaller numbers in the highway fund, water and sewer funds. They're created for a specific purpose. In many cases, funds are donated to the community for a specific purpose. If there are excess funds left over after a period of time, I think it's within your purview to use those funds elsewhere. But we've never asked you to do that because you see this list of funds every month, and if you want to take that approach, Nancy, and the board wishes to take that approach, then I'd be glad to put together a list of those funds that we think are worthy of consideration for move to a fund balance or something along those lines.
Is that budget discussion?
Could we do that in budget? Yeah, exactly. We talk about the reserve funds in budget time anyway. So I think if there is, if there are funds that you feel like have been sitting there since 1943 and are unlikely to be used,
Those were created when I was hired, so.
Some have been there.
You're sentimental about them, I get it.
But we know they have to. But we all know the voters have to vote to approve regular.
Yeah.
The dedicated, you can do without voter approval.
Yeah. The funds that are approved by the voters, you cannot undo. So what I would suggest is that you want to look at those funds that were created either by the board or by donations where the project has long since been finished and there's, several $1,000s left unspent. You might be able to move those into the fund
But the one
balance.
for the tennis court in July, we don't need that. And we didn't vote, the voters didn't do that. And when we started for traffic calming, we couldn't start that either, right?
Well,
Without voter approval?
No, well, what the board has asked me to do is prepare in the budget a reserve for traffic calming. That would be in the ballot. That would be listed on the ballot if whatever monies the board decides.
Okay, then it'll be that way.
So that's a future.
Yeah, that's how it
creation.
gets, that's how the voters voted. So we don't have
Okay.
special elections for those.
And the other thing is, I think in June you talked about Bennington might have to take over the sidewalks and roads in Old Bennington?
That's still a possibility.
Okay.
We did not, there's an act that was passed in the 50s, 1957, I believe, that gave Old Bennington a specific authority over its roads and highways. Old Bennington has considered and had conversations with the town about having that law repealed. If that law is repealed, those roads and sidewalks automatically become the responsibility of the town. So that's the question. It did not happen this legislative session. There was, Old Bennington approached their delegation, but it was either too late in the session. I can't remember exactly why it didn't happen, but it didn't. But I'm sure, yes, they are asking for the change.
Well, I found on their website yesterday that up in Old Bennington, they're looking at 3 different options, and they even know what the difference in their tax rates are going to be. So I think that's something we as the board should have to look at.
Anything that has anything to do with this board will certainly come before this board.
Can you guys talk about this privately? Have a conversation privately?
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't have, sorry.
No,
I
I'm
mean-
just wondering if you could just talk to Stu and get your questions answered directly.
I think if our taxpayers are going to take over the sidewalks and roads in Old Bennington, we should be discussing it.
But that's not on the table right now.
The taxes will grow in Bennington because Old Bennington residents will pay Bennington taxes, Nancy. It's a whole item that will come before this board if it needs to.
All right, can I give my cheery news? Okay, so I just want... No, it's my turn. It's my turn. All right. So I just wanted to say that I had the pleasure of going to the Bennington County Choral Society concert on Sunday. I saw our town manager there, and it was fantastic. It was, the orchestra was fantastic. The MAU chorus was there and sang both separately and with the Choral Society, and it was glorious, and St. Francis was completely full. So it was...
It's a great venue for that kind of...
The sound was beautiful, and the light coming through the stained glass was beautiful. Yeah, it was great. So thank you very much to all the people who spend countless hours rehearsing to give us 2 hours of just glorious music. So it was wonderful. All right, now it's your turn.
So the good news is that I shortened my other business because it came up during the meeting, which is great. So I only have a couple of quick comments, and they're all pretty positive. I wanted to thank Martha and Jack for the promise of an optimistic campaign. That sounds lovely. And seriously thank you to those people that spoke up tonight, Vicki Lamprin, Jason Frederickson. I hear you, I appreciate you, and I will do my part. I want you to know that my intention is always to make sure that accurate information is shared, and some of my frustration has been to avoid misinformation. I need to take a step back because I've heard that from the public tonight and on more than one occasion. I hear you and I appreciate you. Thank you.
That's it?
I told you.
All right, all right. So with that, then, could I have a motion to adjourn? So moved.
Second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Thank you all for staying to the end.